All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to do a real quick and dirty thoughts on three interview videos that I've had the time to check out yesterday. It was fascinating. So I was looking into some Rich Cooper material, and I saw that he had an interview about a year ago with Danica Patrick, and so I looked at the Danica Patrick videos, and then about I don't know, 6 or 8 months after she spoke with Rich Cooper on her channel, she then interviewed Richard Grannon. And then a few months after that, interviewed Orion Taraban. And man, I wouldn't expect anybody else to nerd out that hard and watch those back to back to back. But when I'm at work, it's a 13-hour shift. And it's like, it's Sunday. You know what I mean? So we've got plenty of time, and I can basically do my job. Half the time I can be studying something else that I find interesting while I'm doing my job. So I take the opportunity to do that whenever I can, and I find it to be awesome. It's one of the things that's pretty cool about my job now. Anyway, the bottom line, let's get to the bottom line. So thoughts on the Rich Cooper interview. Very interesting. I thought that was a great one. I took 3 pages of notes here, so I'm going to be looking down and flipping and whatnot. I'm trying to figure out how to make these videos and not lead people down rabbit holes of my thoughts without sticking to a structure. So anyway, the Rich Cooper interview was great. I thought that Rich was a good example of like a strong alpha type guy that is going to be very triggering for women to speak to. And I thought she did a good job of not just being super triggered the whole time. There was a few moments in there when she was giving him a little pushback about some things that he was saying. Most specifically that I wanted to address was the like challenging a man when you're in a relationship with him kind of thing. So Danica will go out of her way to say that she's not a feminist, and that's great that she's not a feminist, but there's an example there of some of the feminist programming that women, even though they're not feminist and they think that feminism is really a detriment, they're still kind of subject to some of this programming. And some of that has to do with just the experiences that you have in your life. Women are able to double dip in the sense that they can benefit from feminism at the same time as, benefiting from men having the natural lean towards being generous to women, protecting women with our own livelihood and our own physical bodies. And so it appears that she operates under some of the feminist programming where she's still kind of like reaching for this equality type of thing. And I think it was really interesting to watch the following videos there with Richard Grannon and Orion Taraban, because you could see in her just overall attitude and posture that there was a bit of a softening on that topic. And I think that's an excellent example of a woman who actually is able to self-reflect, be self-aware. She says she's open-minded. Evidently she is, because it was observable to me that even though Rich Cooper said some things to her about men and women not really being equal and not really wanting equal things from a relationship that maybe were difficult, and then he gave her a little pushback on her idea that a man would want some confrontation in his romantic relationship and a challenge and that kind of thing, which is obviously completely ridiculous. After she spoke with Richard Grannon, there was a little softening there, and he did an excellent job of not being offensive. And I have more in common with Richard Grannon than probably anyone else I've ever seen on the internet. He's like, okay, the stuff that I'm into is really feminine, like this psychology and analyzing people and interpersonal relationships and, offering his time and energy and insight to people in a therapeutic respect and all that kind of stuff. That's all very feminine, right? Feminine. And to kind of summarize what he was saying, he's like, it's not really feminine. It's, you have a dick and balls, because if you do, it's just, you're not feminine. You're a guy. He's very difficult to drag him into this argument of masculine and feminine and, pink jobs and blue jobs and gender roles and that kind of thing. And I haven't exactly landed exactly where he's at on those topics, but I do find his insight there valuable. I find his position valuable. I do definitely have an open mind to more of that and less rigidity in terms of what everybody expects from relationships. And I found that my expectations in relationships, my expectations of women that I'm in relationships with, has been far too high. My relationships have been unsuccessful up to this point because my expectations for the performance out of a woman in a relationship with me, come to find out, has been absolutely unfair. It's unattainable for them. And Orion Taraban will talk about how, don't expect people to do things they can't do. Don't expect women to do things that women can't do. Women don't expect things out of men that men can't do. And there's a lot of value to that. So yeah, with the Rich Cooper interview with Danica Patrick, he made a statement kind of at the end there that the worst advice you could give a young man trying to get into successful relationships with women, and what I mean by successful is long-term healthy relationships, not like dominating a chick, not like putting people down or being hard on people or putting a woman in her place or any of that. None of that. People having a fulfilling long-term relationship, right? And what he said that I thought was very interesting was, don't be yourself. That's the shittiest advice you could give a guy, is like, yeah, get into a relationship with a girl and then just be yourself. Like, no, bro. No, do not do that. He is correct when he says that is the worst advice you could possibly give a guy. And she was offended and triggered and had to interrupt him, even though she was giving him the floor to kind of make his closing comments and everything. She was like, no, bro, fuck that. And so as their interview was coming to a close, I found it comical that still was a point of contention. And that didn't directly come up in the Richard Grannon interview, which was a few months later, but it did in the Orion Taraban interview. And her response to him saying the exact same thing that Rich Cooper said was 100% improved. She was much less triggered, much less threatened. She didn't have her own self-respect on the line when it came to just hearing him say that on her show. And he man, is such a great asset to men and women who are actually trying to have successful long-term relationships. And the way he put it was like, you want to have like a baseline level of professionalism when it comes to these relationships, where you're not just like, I'm going to be however I want, do whatever I want, say whatever I want. I'm just going to expect my, girlfriend or wife or whatever to just deal with it and everything. And dude, you can't do that, man. You can't. I know it's a fantasy, seems like everybody has. I've been guilty of the same thing in the past, where you just want to be yourself. Don't do that. That's a massive L. Okay? Be the best version of yourself at all times. Do not just be yourself, because there's parts of yourself that suck. There's parts of yourself that nobody wants to be around. There's parts of yourself that nobody wants to hear from. And so don't do that to your love interest. Okay? Treat your love interest better than you treat other people, not worse. And things will go much better for you. And I think that's the point, and that's the functional part of what Rich and what Orion were saying. They're not trying to disrespect the idea of you being valuable and having some inherent worth. That's not the point at all. The point is, like, respect the person that you're in this love relationship with. Respect that person enough to not be the shittiest version of yourself in their presence. Okay? Like, treat these people well, and it'll work out much better for you. So yeah, let's see my notes here. Rich, anyway, yeah, so that's kind of the point. Rich was saying the same thing that Orion was saying. And so this morning I watched the interview where Rich Cooper talked to Orion Taraban on his podcast. Highly recommended. These gentlemen definitely know what's going on. Rich Cooper has landed on the same conclusion that I have, that the whole manosphere red pill thing is a swamp full of a lot of loser mentality, victim mentality. It's gay, bro. Most of the time, if you're mad, shut up. You're going to embarrass yourself. I think there's going to be a huge pressure release on this men and women friction that's happening in our society when people stop seeing their goals as mutually exclusive. And I think Orion Taraban would agree with this, and Rich Cooper would agree with this, and probably Danica Patrick would agree with this, that our goals don't have to be mutually exclusive. If we can find a way to come together and have a yes and type of relationship instead of this or that, we're diametrically opposed to one another and somebody has to be the winner and somebody has to be the loser kind of thing, that's going to add pressure, that's going to add stress. You want to relieve the pressure, you want to relieve the stress, you want to be able to come together and function and have a good relationship, then okay, you're the man, it's your job to lead the relationship. So don't just burn your chick to the ground. Be above that. And you can find ways to not make your goals a punishment for the person that you have this relationship with. So yeah, learn about sales. If you want to be successful with women, here's one of the best things you can do is go get a job in sales, because 80% of your customers are going to be women, and you're going to become exquisitely trained in how to speak to them without offending them and get them to purchase what it is that you're selling. And you're also going to learn that a lot of times they don't say what they mean, and they won't mean what they say. You got to get over it. You got to be able to roll with the punches, bro. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but it also doesn't mean that you're going to be able to hold most of these women to the standard that you hold most men to, which is more of a biblical thing where it's like, let your yes be yes and your no be no. If you can get a chick to go there, great. Danica Patrick appears to be one of these probably 15 to 20% of women that's on board with that. Responsibility, accountability, you work hard for something and succeed. If you fail, you don't just quit, you keep going and keep going and keep going. There's going to be a extremely small percentage of women that have had the kind of life experience required to learn that that's a reality. The vast majority are taken care of very well from birth until death, and they have no reason to learn that or to operate in that way. And that's one of the things that Richard Grannon discussed with Danica Patrick, is that what, she was saying, why do these, they were talking about people that have NPD, actual NPD people. And it was profound. Her question to him was, why don't they change? I can't believe that these people can't be cured of this personality disorder and everything. And beautifully, his response to her was, why would they change? They're right. They're right. It works. What they're doing works. And it's wonderful to watch, because it instantly made sense to her. She didn't have to ask follow-up questions and everything, because when something works, when you're doing something and it works, what are you going to do? You're going to go tell them to stop doing it? You're going to tell them they need to change? You're going to tell them what they're doing is wrong? That's cute. It's not going to work. Because like he said, they're right. They're right. Beautiful, man. Anyway, so if you have the opportunity to stand around at work for 13 hours doing something you can do halfway with your brain shut off, I highly recommend listening back to back to back to back to the Danica Patrick interview with Rich Cooper, then the Danica Patrick interview with Richard Grannon, and then the Danica Patrick interview with Orion Taraban, and then follow that up with the Rich Cooper interview with Orion Taraban. And if we could ever get Rich Cooper, Richard Grannon, and Orion Taraban to sit down at a table, God bless. Because there's that would be like better than Monday Night Football to me. I'm into psychology and problem solving. And so I think that would be awesome. Maybe Danica Patrick could set that up. That would be dope. Have a great day.